By now, if you follow the housing data closely, you'll know that inventory of unsold homes on the market is up over 2022. You know that inventory climbed well into November, and that the new listings each week are also running higher than last year. What you may not realize is that the sales volume each week is also now consistently higher each week than in 2022. Supply is inching up, and so is the pace of sales. So when I say sales in this context, the data I'm talking about is that we track all the new contracts pending each week. These are not actually sold yet. It takes a month or two in the contract pending stage before the sales close. Right now, we can count the homes that will be sold in the future. So I'm talking here about the earliest proxy measure for sales. And yes, contracts can fail, so keep that in mind. But we don't see any unusual uptick in contracts failing right now. There's no spike in contracts failing. So it is starting to be reasonable to expect that home sales will grow in 2024 because each week now we have more contracts starting than we did last year at this time. There are slightly fewer homes in contract total than last year at this time. We had a whole year of very few sales. So, but each week, now the new sales are outperforming last year at this time. It'll take several more weeks or months of continued growth to really move the needle, but right now it's just 5% more than last year. There are 5% more contracts started this week than the same week in 2022. Last year at this time, we were looking, in the data to understand if home prices could possibly crash in 2023. At the time, the data told us that probably no home price crash was happening, but that's what we focused a lot of our presentation energy on. What I didn't do at the time was properly highlight the home sales numbers. And had I been more insightful, I would have spent more time on the sales volume and told you that while home prices weren't crashing, the number of sales is plummeting. So right now I'm trying to share both sides of that story, volume and prices. This is a critical moment to be on top of the data. We already have a lot of leading indicators for 2024, and the signals are very surprising. So as a result, we've opened up the registrations for our December webinar already. So that's where we take an hour to dive into all the detailed data and see if these trends are durable. It is critical to be ahead of the headlines here. So our December webinar is Thursday, December 14th at 10 a.m. Pacific. There's a link to register for that webinar in the description below. Click that, get it on your calendar, save your spot. These are limited to 1,000 attendees each month, and we have way more than that who want to join. So click that link below and save your spot. At Altos Research, of course, we track every home for sale in the country every week. We track all the pricing, all the supply and demand, and all the changes in that data, and we make it available to you so you can understand it immediately as it happens. This market continues to surprise, so let's follow the data and see what we can learn. I'm Mike Simonsen. I'm the founder of Altos, and let's take a look at the latest U.S. housing market data for the last week of November 2023. So as we've discussed, inventory rose late into November, which is very unusual. That inventory rise is finally past us. There are now 566,000 single-family homes on the market around the U.S. That's almost 1% fewer than a week ago. We can now confidently say that inventory has peaked for the year and will decline into the new year. Next week, the Thanksgiving numbers will be all baked in fully, and inventory will decline again, of course. There are about 0.5% more homes on the market now than in 2022 at this time, just a fraction more. It looks to me like sellers are now more accustomed to the new mortgage rate environment and more likely to choose to move. So that's contributing to inventory loosening up just a bit. The signal here is that consumers are more sensitive to changes in mortgage rates than to the absolute levels. So that bodes well for increases in home sales volumes in 2024. The available inventory of unsold homes on the market, is still 36% fewer than in 2019 and half of what it was in November of 2015 at the far left end or far left end of this chart here. But what we know now is, we are forecasting inventory to increase in 2024. And that seems like a good thing for all participants. There's no flood of sellers. There's no evidence of a lot more inventory. But any increase in home selection for buyers is welcome. I've been highlighting the new listings and immediate sales chart this fall. Each week, we have slightly more new listings than a year prior. But of course, sellers are still very restricted. This is how you know there's no panic flood of sellers. In this chart, the height of each bar is a total number of new listings each week. The taller the bar, the more the sellers. I've included the annotations here, the lines, so that you can see that we have slightly more sellers this week than last year at this time, 58,000 new listings, of which 10,000 went into contract essentially immediately. The light portion of each bar here is what we call the immediate sales, and those that got listed and took offers within a couple days of listing. So that's the light portion of the bar. What we're watching for in this chart is slightly more sellers each week. We want growth in the new listings, and we want the immediate sales to not evaporate. If the new listings were to shoot up, or the immediate sales to stop, those would be bearish signals. We don't have those signals, but we're watching for them. New listings volume plummets over the holidays and will pick back up after the new year. So the trend we're hoping for here is that we have slightly more sellers this winter and spring than we did last year, and that some of those get snapped up immediately. So inventory is up over last year. New listings are up over last year. We have more sellers. And we've been talking about this for weeks, so it's pretty widely known by now. What's not yet known is that sales are now up compared to last year. So the market has turned the corner just barely from contracting to growing. The number of homes going into contract each week, the new contracts pending in a given week, is now more than last year at this time. So that's what we're showing here in this chart. This chart is just the new pendings each week. The taller the bar, the more new sales were initiated that week. I've included the dotted line so that you can see that since inventory has grown, the lid on sales is starting to lift as well. You can also see that how many fewer sales we have than in previous years. So this is a still very early reversal of the year's trend. The total number of home sales in contract is still fewer. The total number is still fewer than last year. Like it's been, it's just that each week now is looking a tiny bit better. So we have to continue this trend for a couple more months, but the trend is there. There are only 296,000 single-family homes in the contract pending stage now. Last year, there were 304,000. In 2021, there were close to 500,000 single-family homes in contract at the end of November. So this is to say that we still have very few sales completing. The headlines will continue to reprint record few home sales for several more months. The thing to recognize with this data is that the sales increase is running alongside the inventory increase. So more supply seems to be leading to more sales. This is why we foresee more sales in 2024 than in 2023. Here's another way to look at this growth in home sales. In this chart, I've mapped out the new pendings volume compared to the same week a year earlier. Most of the year, home sales, the rate was 20 to 30% fewer than last year. A seasonally adjusted rate, if you pay attention to the seasonally adjusted NAR numbers, dropped from 6 million per year to 4 million. So that's a 30% drop. So in this chart, I've drawn the line at 0%. When the data is below that line, home sales are shrinking when fewer sales than the year prior. When 2023 started, so at the left end of this chart, we had 30 or 40% fewer sales each week happening. Now we're at the right end of this chart, and we have 5% growth, pace of 5% growth over a year ago. So the longer this data stays positive, the more sales growth happens in 2024. The trend here is clear. Like, we had a big shock. The market went from screaming hot to very cold, and we had less demand, we had less supply. Everything has been restricted. The data shows that it's starting to loosen up a little bit. A long sloping upward curve. Just recently as October, even though this chart's been improving all year, we were still in a shrinking market as recently as October, with 5% fewer home sales each week. So that's finally reversed now. Fingers crossed that that trend continues into 2024. And it is important to note that this trend could indeed reverse. There is no guarantee that the market is supported, especially if rates jump again, mortgage rates jump again. A reason for optimism, however, is that rule I mentioned earlier, that consumers are more sensitive to changes in rates than to the absolute levels of rates. Rates have had incredible volatility in the last 20 months. So if mortgage rates in 2024 prove more stable, that would indeed support this trend of improving sales, just more stability. So we focused today on the number of home sales happening. The industry has been in deep recession, and so these are the signals that we're finally emerging. The factor, though, that consumers care about is home prices. So while home sales had a huge drop in 2023, home prices in 2023 had a soft landing. The median price of single-family homes in the U.S. is 1% to 3% higher than it was last year at this time. Homes have been trading in that range for a few months and look to finish the year with these small gains. In this chart, the dark red line is the median price of all the single-family homes on the market in the U.S. That is $425,000 this week. It's down a fraction from last week. That's totally normal for November. I've annotated the chart here so you can see how the market compares to last year at this time. Home prices are just a little bit higher. So we can now foresee home sales picking up in 2024. So what happens to prices? It looks to me like the most optimistic scenario for home prices in 2024 is like a repeat of this year. More likely, I see flat to down prices by a few percent in 2024. Affordability is not improved. Demand is still low. There is a risk of recession and rising unemployment. So none of that bodes well for home prices. Remember that we expected those things in 2023, and the economy grew unexpectedly strong, so home prices did not drop. But on the other hand, if mortgage rates fall substantially, that'd be the one factor that would spur demand more than supply. Inventory would fall, and that would push home prices up. So I don't predict mortgage rates. Mortgage rates could go down from here or up from here, but if they went down substantially, that would be the one scenario that would push prices higher for the year. Likewise, the leading indicators on home prices are not strong, but they're not deteriorating in recent weeks either. So in this chart, the bright red line is the price of the new listings, and that's showing slight improvements over 2023, 3.3% higher. The price of the new listings than last year at this time. The new listings each week are a leading indicator of where future sales will take place. I've not included the price reductions chart today, but price cuts have peaked and are now ticking lower for the holidays. The market has fewer price cuts than last year at this time, so that's a little better. The number of home sellers who are had to cut prices is in the face of weak demand is still higher than normal, so that's not bullish for home prices. It's just less bad than it was last year at this time. And it's roughly similar, so that it seems like home prices are on a target to flat, maybe tick down next year in 2024. So if you need to help buyers and sellers see this change first, you should join us at Altos Research. People need help understanding the fast-changing market. They need to hear it from you. So go to altosresearch.com and book a free consult with our team. We will help you know how to talk about the data, how about your local market with your clients and prospects today. There's a link in the description below to join us. Click that and let's get started. Thanks, everybody.